Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, welcome back out to Giga Texas. It's Monday, the 12th of August, 2024. And even though I started off fairly early today, there is a lot of activity all over the site. Now, before we get into the main video, a couple of things that I do want to let you know about in the intro. First, with these images that you can see on the screen, these are up at the Taylor Rail Yard, which is about 15 miles north of Giga Texas. And this is the location where many of the vehicles that are picked up in the outbound lot here at Giga Texas are transported and then moved onto the trains. Now, a lot of these large tents, or also known as a sprung structure that's being installed up here, has had a few people ask me what is going on. Now, these images taken by Airwave Dynamics on Saturday are essentially moving part of the end-of-line facilities and functions from here at Giga Texas up to the rail yard. And that allows the Tesla employees to do final checks or work on the vehicles as necessary just before they're loaded onto the rail trucks. There is another reason for these tents here, and that's because it is extremely hot and sultry right now here at Giga Texas and this central part of Texas. And it is an extremely difficult environment to be working out about 12 hours a day, especially for all the end-of-line people. So this is a way of allowing them to have facilities where they can work inside and stay out of the heat. It'll also serve the same function in the winter for the cold. Now, if we look at this image over at the outbound lot here at Giga Texas, you can see smaller tents. It does the same purpose as what we're seeing up at the rail yard. Now, another thing that I do want to address really briefly here in the intro has to do with the boring company operations here. Now, there's a new development, and it has to do with the Prufrock-4 tunnel boring machine. And with these images, you can see that Boring Company has just released some information about the new Prufrock-4. Now, when I did my tour back in April, I got a chance to see this in final assembly. And if you want to see some additional information, I would recommend you take a look at these two videos that I did, and it gives you some more information and also some things to look forward to here at Giga Texas, potentially with this tunnel boring machine. Now, some of the information that they released is that when it is assembled, and that includes the tunnel boring machine head and all the gantries, it is 308 feet long, which is about one American football field in length. It weighs about 797,000 pounds, which is about 2 starships full of equipment if they were trying to launch this into low Earth orbit. And also, that's about 150 normal SUVs. It produces up to 4.7 million pounds of thrust, which is about 90% of the Falcon Heavy thrust at takeoff. Now, obviously, it's not a rocket thrust, but this is a thrust that drives that tunnel boring machine head into the ground. And that is a significant improvement over what we saw with the tunnel boring machine Prufrock-3 that was used for the first tunnel here at Giga Texas. Now, will we see this tunnel boring machine in operation here at Giga Texas? We're just going to have to wait and find out. But it's really cool to see that we're getting some additional information about the continued iterative development of the tunnel boring machines. So without further ado, let's get into the drone. Let's fly around and see what activity is going on here at Giga Texas today.
If you would like to support my efforts, please consider using these links, which will be in the video description. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on my YouTube video, as this helps as well. Thank you. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Well, good Monday morning here at Giga Texas's south end. A lot of activity with the south tunnels, but first we're going to start at the southeast corner. More earthwork underway on this section of the site. You can see the bulldozer at the bottom of the screen, some of those portable generators, and also where the grade is being raised up next to the perimeter grade beam on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, as I zoom in at the base of the cooling tower, get a good view of more of those large brown pipes, also some black pipes being installed. These were stored just to the north of the multi-level parking garage in my previous video. Now they've been moved and are being installed here, along with some other electronic equipment on the ground floor. As I turn towards the main building extension, on the ground we can tell that more steel is being erected, a structure around where that manifold comes up out of the ground. Another one of those large brown water pipes on the left-hand side of the screen, and more equipment as well. On the second floor, it's a good view of the interior walls and how this section is continuing to be fitted out with additional equipment. As I zoom back out, a good view of that perimeter grade beam where they are adding the dirt right up to the window level. And I do believe that that's going to continue all the way around the south end, and that'll be part of what covers up these three tunnels. Now, the tunnel closest to us on the ground has got the formwork being installed. In addition to that, some rebar for the walls. And as I maneuver around, it's a great view of how this looks. Now, there's been some question about whether this was an emergency exit or if this is related to the water system. In fact, if there was some sort of emergency or break in the pipes, this would be a way of draining it out. Still not 100% sure, but you can get a good sense of the structure and how these three look. Also, how they kind of empty out towards the cyber pond. So I'll continue to try to get some additional information on these. The center tunnel is the one that is the most completed. We now see some scaffolding around the structure. See that black weatherproofing that's been placed on the walls will be under the ground, and how this face is looking at the exit point. More rebar on the ground as well, and as we approach the third tunnel, this one has got the concrete walls poured. They are now working on the roof section and getting ready for the rebar to be finished and the concrete poured. And all three of these do have a bowed or concave structure for the roof. It is a very different kind of design, and something to watch for as it develops. Now, the white pipe on the center bottom of the screen is, I think, a temporary drain for the roof drains, and that may be until they can get the rest of the permanent structure and the roofing material installed. As we fly along this southwest corner, take a peek inside this entrance way, and some of the equipment that continues to be moved in and assembled inside. We'll pass the yellow and black crane, which is active today, and get closer in to look into the work that's being done on the ground floor and the second floor here of the south extension. The large mezzanine with the bridge cranes is very visible on the top of the screen as well, and a good view through to the backside of the building on the second floor. As I come down in altitude in the center of the screen, you can barely tell the boring tunnel, and it looks like they are doing work on the exit of that tunnel in there as well. On this corner, several things have changed. In addition to more trenching and that blue trench box in the bottom, we do see these black boxes with some of the round holes in the top and additional trenching along the wall. Also, the shorter of the temporary platforms has now been removed. And you can tell right where the old building opening in that window is still there. So it looks like they're getting ready to remove those temporary platforms. This is that excavation, and I was trying to figure out what it was going to be when it's finished. It looks like there are some pipes that are sticking up through here, and then they extend underneath the road and then over underneath that corner of the building where all the excavation work is underway. As I come up onto the roof section, I wanted to show you
the work that is underway to complete the tie-in of the new extension roof and weatherproofing membrane to the existing exterior wall and also the roof of the existing building. This is very similar to the work they did on the southeast corner, again, tying this all together. Now, as I pull away and turn towards the south, I wanted to show you this large gray section, which is directly above the supercomputer cluster. It's got a different kind of insulation material, and this is how it looks today, plus all of the wiring that goes along these rack mounts and into that structure. Just this one small area that still needs the insulation materials installed. As we fly over the corner of the original building here at the bottom and the extension, wanted to give you a bird's eye view looking down at the distance between the cooling plant on the left and the extension, plus a zoom in, and this is another good view of all that pipe and other materials that's being installed on the ground floor, and the graded area which has covered up the pipes that go underneath this section. In addition to that, all of the electrical conduit that has been installed here as well. So I'll continue to maneuver the drone around the power lines and look back at the extension so we can get a good view of what is going on here today. Those 4 tanks continue to be kind of enclosed with some more of those interior walls. It looks like there's a room that has been built next to the right-hand side of the screen on the second floor. And a good view of some of the additional rooms and walls and some of the other equipment that's been installed inside the extension. With the lighting, it's a good view into the south and the bottom floor of the cooling tower. Again, some of those electronic cabinets, some of the conduit, the piping, and additional items that are being installed to make this a functional cooling system for the supercomputer cluster. So I'm going to maneuver the drone up towards the south and give a good view overall from this vantage point of this south end, the main building, the end-of-line facility across the highway in the upper left of the screen, and overall how this part of the site looks today. Wanted to take a look briefly by the South Bridge at this excavation work where they've been doing reconfiguration of the underground storm water management system piping. Looks like they are filling in this excavation now, which means that that work is coming to an end very quickly. So let's take a look across the highway at the west side, and then I'm going to resume on the other side of the highway. We'll take a look at what is going on this part of the site. Now at the bottom right is where we see some of the Boring Company tunnel liners, and I'll show you that closely here shortly. And right now we're going to take a look at this triangular section that has had a lot of materials, the kind of the electrical conduit for lighting system, and some other steel materials that are being stored. Also a good view of that large clearing, downtown Austin, and this west material staging yard. As we fly back over the West Warehouse and Wheels, looking to the north at the outbound lot and the end-of-line facility, I did notice something on my previous video that I wanted to take a much closer look at, and it has to do with these concrete liners, specifically the road surface liners that were installed in the tunnel and have now been removed. We do also see crews loading up several of these to be removed from the site. Now, the one thing that I did notice, and we will see this here shortly as I get closer, is that some of these sections which do form that road surface have actually cracked in half. We see one with a crack in the middle on the left-hand side of the screen, and then another that's been completely broken through. And as I maneuver further to the north, there's a couple other ones that show this cracking again. Now, the one at the bottom of the screen has actually cracked into almost a V shape, and they have a metal band that has been attached to keep it together. And then as I zoom in, this shows you some other ones that are broken. Now, what's very interesting is that there does not appear to be any rebar in these road surface liners. And that's possibly because they're using like a fiber reinforcement instead. And I don't know if that's contributing to the fact that these are breaking. I'm not also sure, but it's a speculation on my part that they've had several of these break, and they are removing them to either replace them with something stronger or go back to the Bastrop facility and do some testing. But it is a possible explanation of why they've been doing all of the liner removal recently. Now here's a good view close in of workers that are doing excavation work at the entrance of the tunnel, and we did see those concrete liners inside. Those have been removed. Also, some of the pipe work that has been installed there, it looks like that's being removed as well. And later on in the day, on the side of the tunnel, I saw an excavator starting to do some digging. So it may be what they're doing here is preparing for that facing structure so that the tunnel can be operational. But as I continue to maneuver and keep the zoom in, this is a good view of the work that is underway and how this appears right now. And it's definitely something that we will watch to see how it continues to develop. Also, I'm wondering with the Prufrock-4 announcement that we talked about in the intro, if maybe at some point in the future we might see that in action somewhere here at Giga Texas. So as far as Boring Company operations, that'll be definitely something that we will watch for over the coming weeks and months. So let's take a look at the end-of-line facility in the outbound lot and see what activity is going on here today. Many of the Cybertrucks have been redistributed from the north lot to the outbound lot west and center sections. And you can see all the groupings put together, some of the trucks picking them up. And of course, those are those tents that we talked about in the intro as well. And more activity by the superchargers on the south end. In addition to that, some of those light poles that are on the ground on the bottom left that will be installed around this area soon. Now, a couple of things that I have learned is the reason why some of these Cybertrucks have kind of accumulated over the last few days. We do see many still here, is that there has been some replacement of a few parts within the Cybertruck, and I think that they may have discovered that there was a fault with a module within the Cybertrucks, maybe from a supplier, and they've had to replace those parts. And that got them a little behind over the last few days. The fact that many of these are being prepared for shipping off-site means that they probably spent the weekend fixing that and replacing all of those parts. As we continue to fly along the north end, we do see some excavation work on the right-hand side of the screen. And on the north end of the end-of-line facility, more Cybertrucks grouped together waiting for their turn to go inside for that final processing. And here's a good view looking down at this north face where all those Cybertrucks are ready for that processing. Passing the west main entrance, I wanted to stop and look at the activity where the Model Ys are exiting the factory. They get queued up in these lines, and then the drivers are bussed back over. They get into the vehicles and then drive them to the west outbound lot. Again, since this is early Monday, it means that the production is just gearing up for the week here today after having essentially the weekend off. And that is part of that new schedule we have talked about in the past. No real changes on this section where the concrete's been removed. And that temporary security fence looks like part of it has fallen over, so they'll probably need to raise that back up. I did notice a few deliveries here on this flatbed truck and also some material being recycled in that blue bin. This is part of the 4680s. Also, a truck is replenishing the nitrogen that is used as part of the battery cell production processes inside. I'm going to turn around on this northwest corner, get a good view back along the route that we came on that west side, and you can see that plume of vapor coming out of that nitrogen truck as we departed that side of the factory. I'm going to reposition here on the north end of the 4680s in between the two receiving door and temporary platforms, and a good view of the amount of materials, some of the dumpsters, and as a reminder, the construction is continuing on the inside, but it's mostly finished from the major construction to expand the lines. As we fly along the north face of the paint shop, we do see some of the rack mounts for the bodies, some castings, and a lot of activity here with these portable air conditioning units that are being installed. And we can see some of the wires that are connecting them in between. Also, in the receiving door on the center right of the screen, we can see many of those wires going on the inside next to those gray and blue piping that was being installed. Also, a good look at these three covered receiving doors and these kind of black plastic new doors that were cut into the wall recently. As we fly over some of the castings and some of the steel studs for interior walls, so a good view of all of the activity that is here on the east side today. And there is a lot of progress being made on this section with all the rebar and those large steel columns and mounts on the right-hand side of the screen and near that wall. You can get a good view of the additional rebar that's being installed here. And then this section has a lot of rebar. Looks like it has been partially filled in with maybe some concrete or maybe a mud base or a little bit of both, and then covered with some blankets to help with the curing and keep it from getting too hot from the heat out while it's doing that curing process. As I fly up higher and take a look at the baghouse filtration plant, there's a lot more assembly of equipment that is going on, particularly on the ground floor with some of those pipes. And I'll give you a closer view of that here in a second. I do want to give you a good zoom in of that work here on this apron with all of the rebar, those beams, and again, those covered section where I think it's had that concrete poured on the left. We also saw some rails being embedded into that slab, and they extend into that newly cut in receiving door. As I mentioned, the baghouse filtration plant continues to get pipe work on the ground floor, some additional items being installed on the upper floors, and that's a great view of how this continues to change in a pretty rapid rate. As I continue to fly to the south, I wanted to get a good view and update of this section, and most of the grade work is complete. On the right-hand side of the screen, I think they're going to be putting a small retaining wall, and then hopefully we'll see some rebar and then finish this out with concrete soon. Many castings on the ground all along the east side, and that continues a trend where we see castings being made over the weekends, and then production resumes on Monday, and then they use them up during the Monday to Thursday, and then that cycle repeats right now. Good view along the east side down to the south at that multi-level parking garage, and more of the Cybertrucks in this temporary lot waiting for additional work before they can go over to the outbound lot. On the left-hand side of the screen on the ground, this is where those large brown pipes that we saw being installed in the chiller plant ground floor came from. They were all arrayed here on Friday. Now they have been moved and installed on that south end. As I pull away, this is a great view from the east, looking back to the west across the east parking lot to the main factory, and how it looks here today from this vantage point, particularly from over the east warehouse on wheels, which is in the center of the screen. fly over the smaller employee overflow lot. We're going to get closer to the electrical switch yard. While we're on the way, I'll also give you a view of those trailers, which are temporary offices for Tesla, and they're used for the Welcome Center and also new employee Welcome Center as well. Great view back to the main factory and the entire east side parking lot and multi-level parking garage, and the electrical switch yard coming up here on the right-hand side of the screen. And this is meant to try to just give you a reminder of where this is located in respect to the building itself. The megapacks on the right, and on the south end is where most of that conduit installation and also wire running through the conduit is being done. Now here next to these two white trailers is where a third will eventually be placed, I believe, and it looks like there is some work being done into that access point underneath into that vault right now. And this is a good view. I'll zoom in of some of the wires that are being run through the conduit, and this again will reach all the way down to the casting machine northeast corner. And then a lot of these will run on the roof along the parapet wall down to the south supercomputer cluster. Now these wires are very large and heavy, and they will arrange them out onto that fabric membrane in this manner to make it easier for them to be able to snake them through the conduit, which runs from here under the ground over to the electrical wires under the poles, and then to the south. And I'll follow generally down to where it picks up just past these trailers. It makes a 90-degree turn with these concrete vaults, and you can see some of the wires that are kind of temporarily arranged here. And then it will continue across underneath the wires to this new concrete structure that we've been watching develop over the last week or two. And it looks like the concrete has now been poured. All the formwork has been removed, and that means that we will start seeing some more of the finishing work, plus possibly some of the electronic items, whether it's transformers or switches or something else that will be installed in this section. But there are 4 groupings of the conduit sticking out of the floor. It's a good view of 2 of them. The other 2 are near the wall that's closest to the drone. And of course the 4 underground concrete vaults where all the conduits are connected as well. As I bring the drone down a little lower, we can get a good sense of where the rest of the underground conduit runs over to these 2 concrete vaults. Then it makes a almost 90-degree turn, runs underneath Tesla Road, the landscape section, over to the northeast corner of casting. And all of this is related to that wire installation that we saw at the south end of the electrical switch yard. So as I bring the drone up, I'll give you a good overall view of the entire site, many of the areas that we did visit today. I hope that you enjoyed what we were able to talk about in the intro, and also what we were able to see and talk about during the video itself. As always, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great week.